Good evening and welcome to NewsNight. I'm Erin Ute. Tonight we'll have all your international, national, and local Pittsburgh news. Find out what country is in the midst of another doping scandal at the Olympic Games. Also, we'll have more information about what cities are making new and getting rid of old COVID-19 mandates. Lastly, our reporters will have all the newest local news about what bridge is going to be shut down for construction, and as always, we'll have your weekly weather forecast. All this and more coming up on NewsNight. Koalas were declared officially endangered on Friday, February 4th in eastern Australia as they fall prey to disease, lost habitat, and other threats. Federal Environment Minister Susan Ley downgraded their conservation status across the country's east coast in Queensland, New South Wales, and the Australian Capital Territory on a recommendation by the government's Threatened Species Scientific Committee. Earlier, they had been listed as a vulnerable species. Many koalas in Australia suffered from chlamydia. Koala populations in New South Wales have fallen by 33 to 61% since 2001. In 2020, a preliminary inquiry warned the species might become extinct before 2050 without urgent intervention. The number of koalas in Queensland have fallen by half since 2001 due to droughts, fires, and deforestation. Some are killed by dogs or run over on roads. The Australian Koala Foundation estimates that there are less than 100,000 koalas left in the wild, possibly even as few as 43,000. Summer brush fires in 2019 and 2020 killed at least 6,400 koalas as rescuers worked desperately to save them and treat their injuries. The government contends that listing koalas as endangered will highlight and help address the threats, while conservation groups argue more has to be done to prevent their extinction. The Australian Koala Foundation has called for legislation to protect them and curb land clearing and mining projects that are wrecking their habitats. It says that koalas in Victoria and South Australia are in danger as well. On Saturday, February 12th, the United States suspended avocado imports from Mexico. The imports were halted from the Mexican state Michoacán, the only state in Mexico authorized to export avocados to the U.S. The suspension was caused by a threatening message that a U.S. plant safety inspector received to his official cell phone while carrying out an inspection. The inspectors work for the United States Department of Agriculture to make sure that no imports carry diseases that could hurt the United States crops. The suspension lasts until further notice, since the threat is currently being investigated to determine the severity and necessary measures to be taken. Decades ago, a small town was destroyed to help create a new reservoir. Reporter Sam Hyman has more information about this town and what is resurfacing the discussion around it.
30 years ago, Spain flooded the village of Acerado to create a reservoir by the name of the Alto Lindoso. Now, for the first time since 1992, the village is seeing the light of day. Maria del Carmen Yámez, mayor of the area surrounding the ruins, claims its remains have likely become exposed due to a combination of Spain's ongoing drought and, quote, quite aggressive exploitation by the managers of the reservoir, which is Portugal's power entity, EDP. While the exposure of the ruins has increased tourism for this region of Spain, many are begging the question of whether or not reservoirs are an efficient and reliable way to conserve water. Environment Ministry data shows that Spain's reservoirs are at only a 44% capacity, which lies well below the average of 61% over the past decade. The Alto Lindoso reservoir in particular, the one that now exposes Acerado, has itself been dried up to only 15% of its capacity. As an exact causation for the droughts has not yet been specified, only time will tell if the issue will worsen or come to a halt.
Russian Olympic figure skater Kamila Valieva is currently under investigation after failing a drug test, following her performance in the Games on February 4th. Valieva was sent to win a gold medal for Russia until the award ceremony was postponed. She tested positive for a metabolic modulator, which is used to cause greater muscle growth and increase athletic performance. Valieva went before the Court of Arbitration on Monday, where it was determined that she could still skate in the Games. However, she will not be eligible to receive any medals. Russia was previously banned from the Olympics for a 2014 doping scandal, so similar punishments may still be in store for the country. But coming up after the break, find out more about what cities are making changes to the vaccine and mask mandates. Also, we'll be able to give you more information about a recent celebrity's passing. Stay tuned.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, and welcome back to NewsNight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen raiding.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more.
All this and more.
All this and more coming up on NewsNight.
Coming up on NewsNight.
Coming up on NewsNight.
Actor and comedian Bob Saget had COVID-19 but died as a result of, quote, blunt head trauma, according to the autopsy report, which was released on Friday, February 11th by the Orange County Medical Examiner's Office. A statement made from Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Joshua D. Stephanie said, quote, "It is in my opinion that the death of Robert Saget, a 65-year-old white male, was found unresponsive in a hotel room, is the result of a blunt head trauma. It is most probable that the descendant suffered an unwitnessed fall backwards and struck the posterior aspect of his head. The manner of death is accident," end quote. The official findings echo what was said in a statement released by Saget's family 2 days prior, in which they cited head trauma as the cause of his death. The report also noted that a PCR test was conducted and showed that Saget was positive for COVID-19. Saget, who was in his hotel room in Orlando, Florida just last month, had said in December that he had COVID-19 and a PCR test can return positive results for 2 weeks after recovery. The autopsy additionally noted that he had an enlarged heart with 95% of blockage on one side. No alcohol was present in his system, and according to the report. However, it did state that his system contained clonazepam/Klonopin, which is taken for seizures, panic disorders, and anxiety, as well as the antidepressant trazodone. Mayor of D.C. Muriel E. Bowser announced that she will be ending the city's proof of vaccination rule before entering businesses. Due to the city's lowering COVID numbers, proof of vaccination will not be required for entrance to any businesses, and soon masks will not be either. On March 1st, the city's indoor mask mandate will also be lifted. Masks will still be required in certain buildings, such as schools and public transportation, as well as advising all people to wear masks indoors. Some residents and council members expressed their discontent with the plan, stating the large number of immunocompromised individuals. Despite the pushback, Bowser continued the mandate, and it will begin on March 1st. On the contrary to Washington, D.C., a new mandate proposed for the teachers of New York City is being debated and has made its way to the Supreme Court. San Hyman has more details about the appeal.
On Friday, February 11th, the Supreme Court struck down an appeal created by a group of New York City school teachers regarding the COVID-19 vaccination mandate. This appeal was filed by 15 members of the Department of Education on Tuesday, February 8th. They argued that the mandate, which they sought to block, violated their religious freedoms. However, the city requires religious exemptions to be backed by religious leaders. In the past, New York has not accepted Pope Francis as such due to his instances of outspoken support for vaccination. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor blocked this appeal on Friday, the same day as New York's deadline for city employees to comply with the vaccine mandate. New York City Mayor Eric Adams stated earlier this week that he intends on continuing with the termination of city workers who have not yet been vaccinated against COVID, averaging out to be roughly 4,000 of the city's nearly 400,000 employees.
Coming after the break, we'll have your Pittsburgh news. We'll have our reporters tell you all about what bridge is next to go under construction to make some repairs. Also, we'll find out what event will be taking place at the end of April in the city. Proposals for Pittsburgh City Council to increase focus on the city's infrastructure in the wake of the Fern Hollow Bridge collapse are drawing mixed reactions from council members. The first piece of legislation would create a 15-member committee of city officials, construction industry professionals, organized labor representatives, and others to make recommendations on short and long-term investments in the city-mandated infrastructure, like bridges and tunnels. The second measure would require the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure to produce regular reports on the city's infrastructure, which would be publicly available. Councilman Corey O'Connor, who introduced the legislation, said on Wednesday, February 9th, that he feels the measures would, quote, provide transparency with our infrastructure and encourage experts to focus more attention on the city's bridges and tunnels. There are over 4,000 bridges in the city, including 130 to 140 that are owned by the city. Acting Director, Department of Mobility and Infrastructure Kim Lucas said, while City Councilman Ricky Burgess appeared to agree that the city's bridges and other infrastructure need work, he said he did not believe that this legislation would help, stating that this is a, quote, financial problem, not a policy problem. About $25.3 million in federal funding has been allocated to rebuild the Fern Hollow Bridge, and the proposed committee would not be able to produce the necessary cash to address the rest of the city's infrastructure needs, Burgess said. Both pieces of legislation were held for further discussion this week. Council President Teresa Cal-Smith told members that during today's public meeting that she felt they would be cautious of what they publicly discussed regarding infrastructure matters, as the city may be facing lawsuits. The University of Pittsburgh is terminating 9 employees and is disciplining 3 faculty members who have not complied with the university's vaccine mandate. This comes 4 months after Pitt started a vaccine mandate for its students and employees. These employees and faculty members had not provided proof of vaccination or pursued an exemption. University Senate President Robin Keir said in an interview that, quote, the University Senate has repeatedly and overwhelmingly confirmed its stance that the COVID-19 vaccines are the safest and best way for our community to stay healthy, protect each other, and exit the pandemic, end quote. And that she hopes, quote, these employees either provide proof of receiving a COVID-19 vaccination or pursue an exemption to come into compliance to avoid these consequences. For more Pittsburgh news, we'll have our reporter Alex Sonneiser give all the details about what local man is being charged with more than one crime in the area, as well as what Pittsburgh event will be making its return at the end of April.
A Pittsburgh man was connected to two crimes that happened within minutes of one another in two different neighborhoods. The man, Anand Todd, is now behind bars at the Allegheny County Jail and is facing several charges. According to police paperwork, Todd is accused of beating his ex-girlfriend and then burning down her house. His ex-girlfriend told police that he lit the house on fire because she no longer wanted to be in a relationship with him. Firefighters rushed to Chaucer Street to put out the fire. This started in the city's Homewood North neighborhood around 1:30 a.m. on Tuesday, February 8th. Then around 3:20 a.m., police had to respond to a domestic violence call in the city's Lincoln-Leamington-Belmar neighborhood along Apple Street. Police arrived at the apartment, where they could hear a woman inside crying for help. Shortly after, Todd opened the door and he pushed an officer down the stairs. Todd allegedly had beaten the victim in the head with a mop and strangled her, leaving her laying on the floor. Todd resisted arrest, but was eventually taken into custody. He is now facing many charges, including aggravated assault, strangulation, arson, and assaulting an officer. Also in Pittsburgh news, the Pittsburgh Marathon is set to make its return this year. It will take place April 29th through May 1st. The courses for the weekend have now been announced. P3R CEO Troy Schooley said, quote, "With some of the best views of the city and a tour of 14 neighborhoods, our course is one of the reasons why runners love to come back year after year to run our race. Each year, the crowd support along the course is incredible. No other city has fans like Pittsburgh, and those fans show up on race day cheering our runners all the way to the finish line," end quote. On Sunday, it will follow a similar route to the 2019 route. The Saturday 5K and the Kids Marathon will now be crossing the Andy Warhol Bridge before it finishes downtown. The UPMC Health Plan Pittsburgh Half Marathon will split off from the full marathon once it reaches the Birmingham Bridge, following the first 11 minutes of it. The half marathon runners will return to downtown on 5th Avenue. A second half marathon will be available for people who raise $1,500 or more for a charity of their choice. This will be limited to 500 runners. A free course preview will be hosted by P3R and Steel City runners on Saturday, April 9th.
Pittsburgh's iconic Roberto Clemente Bridge closed on Monday morning for a long-planned restoration. The bridge is set to go under a series of repairs that will strengthen rusted steel as well as cracks in the bridge's concrete supports. One casualty of the repairs will be the thousands of so-called, quote, love locks that litter the bridge's railings. They will be removed and donated to the Industrial Arts Workshop in Hazelwood for an upcoming project. It is last inspection, the bridge was said to be in fair condition. However, the recent collapse of the Fern Hollow Bridge has placed a greater emphasis on the state of the city's infrastructure. The Roberto Clemente Bridge will not reopen until December of 2023. Coming up after the break, we'll have your weekly Weather Pittsburgh forecast with Craig Frykowski. We'll be right back.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to NewsNight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen raiding a
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more
All this and more
All this and more coming up on NewsNight.
coming up on NewsNight.
coming up on NewsNight.
As per usual, Pittsburgh's weather this week has reached temperatures in the low 20s and well as the low 60s. Luckily, Craig Frykowski has more details on what we can expect this week. Craig?
Thanks, Aaron. Let's start with tomorrow's forecast. Tomorrow is going to be warm with 62-degree high. Throughout the day, there will be rain showers. There's a 97% chance of rain, and the showers will become heavier towards the end of the day. At night, the temperature is going to drop to 29 degrees, and the rain from the day will turn to ice. Be careful and look out for slippery sidewalks. The average temperature for the 17th of February is usually in the low 40s, so luckily we're getting some higher temperatures this year. Let's take a look at this week. The rest of this week is looking to drop in temperatures again, at least into the weekend. Friday and Saturday are both in the low 30s, but luckily we will be showing a lot of sun through the day, starting on Sunday. The temperatures are going to reach from the mid-50s and 60s. Both Sunday and Monday will be full of sunshine with the sun hides again on Tuesday. By the end of this week, Wednesday's temperature is going to be 55 degrees, but also remain cloudy. Other than tomorrow, there is not an overwhelming amount of rain predicted. That's all I have for you this week. Back to you, Aaron.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of NewsNight. If you want to see more, check out our social media pages on both Facebook and Instagram at UView Television. You can also check out more episodes on our YouTube channel or our website, uview.pointpark.edu. I'm Erin Ute, and from everyone here at NewsNight, thank you for watching and have a great evening.